All right, time once again for a meeting of the Clyde Sukeforth chapter of SABR. I am Bruce McClure, the chapter chair, and we always hold our meetings in conjunction with the Gardner Waterman chapter of SABR in Vermont, Dr. Clayton Truder, chair. And maybe someday we'll get Clayton to stop by to a meeting. What do you say? I'm gonna have to. I got to take a ride. All right, so let's get right into this one. What do you say? Ron Luciano was a college football star, baseball umpire, TV broadcaster, and best selling author. He barged through the world with an outsized personality, entertaining many, offending a few, and hiding behind a cheerful and outrageous persona until life somehow proved unbearable. Everyone knew him, but nobody really did. Once an All-American tackle at Syracuse University, Luciano turned to umpiring after an injury derailed his professional football career, and he quickly moved up the minor league ladder to reach the majors in 1969. As a big, likable loser, Oliver Hardy in blue, he became a fan favorite in the American League, shooting runners with his forefinger, conducting a legendary feud with Baltimore Orioles manager Earl Weaver, and entertaining writers with outlandish baseball stories, some of which were even true. Even as he added years to his umpiring career and was considered among the game's best, some players and managers thought his showmanship detracted from his abilities. He later became a baseball color analyst on a national TV network before co-authoring a series of rollicking best-selling sports books, all of which I think are in the library here. Away from the game, he loved Shakespeare and birdwatching, but his upbeat public face was at odds with his private struggle with depression. His suicide at age 57 shocked and puzzled friends, fans, and readers alike. SABR member Jim Leeke is a former journalist, copywriter, and creative director. He interviewed Ron Luciano during Ron Luciano's first book tour way back in 1982. Leeke is the author of several books, including The Gas and Flame Men, Baseball and the Chemical Warfare Service during World War I, and From the Dugouts to the Trenches, Baseball During the Great War, which was the winner of the Larry Ritter Award. He lives in Columbus, Ohio. Jim Leeke, welcome to Northern New England, my friend. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for the invitation. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you doing this. When I was in high school, I insisted on doing a book report on The Umpire Strikes Back and drove my sophomore, I believe, sophomore English teacher completely batty. And but it was a book that interested me and got me started on baseball literature. And I think I did pretty well in the book report. I don't know. But so I'm going to step aside. Tell me a little bit about Ron Luciano that I don't know, man.
Oh, well, Ron Luciano really wasn't the Ron Luciano that he presented. That was a persona that he created and perfected over the years. This big, amiable goof, uh, and not very bright, uh, telling these stories from his time in the league. Um, Ronnie And I think of him as Ronnie now because that's how many of his friends referred to him back in the day. Uh, Ronnie actually was a very bright man. Some people even thought he was brilliant. Um, he he wanted more than anything to be an NFL player. He was an All-American at Syracuse, but injury kept him off the field in the NFL and the AFL. He never played a game that counted. He went to the minor football leagues. He went to the semi-pro leagues. He played as long as he could and broke his heart when he had to stop. And I really think that he got into baseball as the next best thing. He knew some umpires who recommended the profession to him. He gave it a try and was very successful. But what he really wanted to be was an NFL tackle. And I don't think he ever really got over the fact that he couldn't do that.
How, how did how did he become interested in umpiring or baseball in general? Because he was a football guy, as you just mentioned. I've always been interested in how he really circled around to becoming an umpire.
Well, he didn't really play baseball as a kid much.
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't much of a fan. The team he did follow was the Yankees. Football was his life for a long time. And when it was over, he had to do other things. He tried school teaching. He wrote that it didn't work out because he hated kids, which absolutely was not true. He loved kids. What he hated was teaching. And he tried some other things. He tried radio. He tried promoting some hamburger outlets. Nothing appealed to him. When his umpire pal suggested that maybe give that a try, he decided to do it. He was really desperate to get back on the field, any field. And if he couldn't do it in football, he decided to do it in baseball.
How long was he in the minors?
Uh, I always have to look those things up.
That's
I got
okay.
my cheat sheet right here. Um, he was in the Florida State League in 1964, as soon as he got out of umpire school. And by 1969, he was in the American League. I mean, it was a pretty quick rise through the ranks because he was actually a pretty good umpire. He was a very good umpire early on.
I I remember him as being excellent at what he did and having a very, very good understanding of the rules. When he was on television, he was I distinctly recall him discussing some obscure baseball rules with his play-by-play partners and blowing them away with his knowledge.
He was very knowledgeable, and in the minors and in the first seasons in the American League, he was an exceptionally good umpire. Even the players voted him one of the two
Hmm.
exceptional umps in the American League. But the longer he stayed, um, the less happy he was with the profession. Um, I would say his abilities slipped, but I think his interest slipped. So by 1979, the umpires went on strike, and he was the president of the Umpires Association. He led that strike, and it was a long and bitter strike. And when they came back, he worked out that season, and he fully intended to work the field again in 1980. But just before the season started, NBC came to him and said, "We think you'd make a good color man, a good analyst." They gave him a audition, and literally a couple of days before the season started, Ronnie resigned and signed up with NBC.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember him on television. I remember him. He was the first base umpire when Yaz got, I believe it was his 3,000th hit. It was either the 3,000th hit or the 400th home run, but he was the first base umpire for one of those. Let's back up and talk about where he came from. Talk to us a little bit about where Ron came from, his his beginnings, his life.
He came from Endicott, New York, one of the Triple Cities, with uh, Johnson City and Binghamton. uh, his father had immigrated from Italy. His mother was also of Italian heritage, and there was a very strong Italian community in Endicott and the surrounding towns. His parents ran a little restaurant. It began as a lunchroom, became a restaurant, and very, very popular. But his father died when Ronnie was young, and he was raised by his mother and two older sisters. He was an enormous kid. He was bigger than anybody else in his class, always. Uh, he played high school football, not very well at first, but much better. And he wanted to play college ball. and he really didn't have any offers. It didn't have any major offers until the coach of a rival team recommended him to Syracuse. And that's where he went. And he got better and better until his senior year, he was an All-American.
And he would if he wound up did he get drafted in the AFL?
He got drafted by the Detroit Lions.
It's the NFL. Okay.
Right. And, he was very happy about that. But you may remember the old college all-star game where the college football stars played the champions of the NFL, insanity. There's no way that game would happen today. No way. But back then, in 1959, he was chosen to play, and he really wasn't too happy about it. He wanted to go straight to the Lions. But uh, he went and he got hurt in a scrimmage before the game even happened. And he didn't even suit up for the game. Though in his first book, he writes about how it was Big Daddy Gene Lipscomb who tossed him aside and hurt his shoulder during the game. Well, it just wasn't so. I think that's the story Ronnie invented later to. I think that story was easier for him to live with than the fact that he never even suited up.
Hmm. Hmm. He built this persona, this gregarious, fun, almost at times outlandish persona. And that really wasn't him, was it?
Well, it was partly him. He was a gregarious person. He enjoyed people. Uh, he enjoyed being in and around sport. But the complete persona was not him. He wasn't this big, goofy, amiable doofus. He was very bright. Um, for instance, he loved Shakespeare. He loved bird watching. He used to say that he had the heaviest suitcases among all the umpires because they were filled with volumes of Shakespeare and bird guides. Um, you couldn't call him an intellectual by any means, but he certainly was a very bright and curious person.
He battled depression. Is that right?
He did, yes, and he hid it very well. His close friends knew he struggled at times, but in the last months of his life, he actually shocked a friend by admitting that he had admitted himself to a hospital for treatment for depression. He really hid it very well. And in his last days, he seemed fairly normal to everybody who knew him and was close to him. I mean, people, longtime friends knew he had struggles, but everybody was shocked by his end.
I reading the book, reading about Ronnie, I I get conflicted over his public persona and what really happened to him. And I remember a while back, this goes back a good ways. A friend of our chapter, a mutual friend of ours, Jim Perry Barber, discussed um, Luciano and his struggles with depression and mental illness. And I can't help but think that today he probably would have had a better chance than he did years ago by checking himself in. I don't know as if you can comment to that or if you can comment to any of his friends who had um, knowledge.
Well, that may be right. He may have had a better chance today. As far as I know, he was only treated the once,
Oh,
have no knowledge of what medications he might have had. There was a lot of other things going on. He had at the end he had no romantic partner. He had a very poor self-image, body image. Um, it's entirely possible that he had some lingering problems from football, as many, even most football players do. There was a lot going on. Uh, yeah, he may have had a better chance
I don't
today.
know.
Then you think about, people have mentioned this to me before. Robin Williams. Robin Williams had access to everything, presumably, and it wasn't enough. And some people, particularly very bright people, I think very talented people, sometimes in the end just can't cope.
It's just it's an awful thing to go down that road. If you have a question, if you would like to know something, if you have questions about Ron Luciano for our presenter Jim Leeke tonight, please go down to the bottom of the screen and hit the react button. You'll see a second button marked raise hand. Raise your hand and we can get you in line to ask questions of our presenter this evening. First up is David Kaiser. David, go.
Well, thank you. I want to comment on some of the things you said based on reading his first book, which I remember very well, although I haven't looked at it in a long time, but it made a great impression on me. And I had a career as a soccer official myself, which gave me some insight, although I never did any baseball. And I remember he had tremendous feeling for the game, obviously, and he had very high standards. I remember one very moving passage, and this would have been very early in his career. He was behind the plate when Ken Tatum of the Angels hit Paul Blair in the head. And he said that pitch had a lot of impact. Tatum was never the same pitcher. Blair was never the same hitter, which is absolutely true. Blair was on his way to the Hall of Fame before that. And I was never the same umpire because after that, I would never tolerate pitchers throwing at batters. And he had tremendous fights with both Weaver and with Billy Martin, I remember, who we threw out of the game because Martin had decided that Robin Yount was going to be dusted off at every at bat in the game. And after two at bats, he threw him out. So all that impressed me very much. And he obviously was very smart from that book. I also remember reading The Men in Blue by Larry Gerlach. He is not in it, but Emmett Ashford is in it. And Emmett Ashford loved him because he was kind of Emmett Ashford squared. And he also said he said he's a great umpire and a terrific guy. Yeah. So you just might want to comment on that. I don't know.
Right. That pitch that hit Blair,
Yeah.
Ronnie actually thought had been killed.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, it had a profound impact on him. After that, he never had any tolerance for intentional brush back pitches or intentionally hitting the batter. No, he just would not stand for that ever. And
Mhm.
he threw out Billy and Earl and any number of other people for doing it.
Yeah.
And Emmett Ashford, yeah, there were definite similarities between the two men. Emmett saw a lot of himself in Ronnie, though Ronnie didn't intentionally imitate him. They were just a lot alike. A lot alike.
Yeah.
Their personalities were similar.
Yeah. If I may, the way you talk, it sounds like you actually did know him face to face. Is that correct?
Uh, I met him. I interviewed him on his first book tour at the
Okay.
Francis Hotel
Okay.
in San Francisco in May of 1982.
Okay.
And I wrote the usual story. The Ronnie story was easy to write. Everybody wrote it because he was so entertaining, such a good interview. The story just flowed out. And when he died 13 years later by his own hand, many people were shocked. I was certainly shocked, and I felt that I hadn't done a very good job, and that most of us hadn't done a very good job because we took the easy story. I mean, that's sort of the nature of daily journalism. But I made some notes at the time, and years later, I did Ronnie's bio project a couple of years ago, and I just said, well, maybe it's time to do his biography because I wanted to understand what had happened. And when you're working on a biography, you think you know your subject. You hope you know your subject. I met him once for, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes, but I spent an awful lot of time digging around in his life the last few years. So I feel like I know him, and I feel that he would allow me to call him Ronnie. I hope so. So many people did. And that's the way I think of him anyway.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
The research that you did for this book, well, let me back that question up for just a minute. It sounds like the genesis for this book goes back to the Umpire Strikes Back book tour years ago, and that's where you got interested in Ron and his life. Is that true?
Uh, that's where I first met him. He definitely made an impression. I don't know how many other people he spoke to the same day. I don't know, 6, 8, a dozen. I don't know. But he gave me a great interview. I'm sure he gave everybody a great interview. He was a very memorable character. He just burst into this room. He just overwhelmed everything and everybody. A very memorable person. But I think it was his death that really tugged me and stayed with me for a number of years until what? Now it's 30 years after his death. And,
That
and
doesn't seem possible.
I'm sorry.
It doesn't seem possible. It's been that long.
No, it doesn't seem possible. No. Um, I hope he wouldn't have minded that I wrote the book. His family apparently did mind. I contacted several members of his
Oh,
family, and they very politely and firmly declined to speak with me. And I completely understand that. I have absolutely no problem with it. I do understand it, but I wish I'd had the chance to talk with him.
what family does he have that's still living? I'm very interested in this. They
Well,
did not want to participate in this at all.
no.
Wow.
I contacted 2 or 3 of the younger generation, and what I think is that they deferred to his sister, who at least a couple of years ago was alive and may still be today. She was the matriarch of the Luciano clan, and I think she didn't want to delve into it. I completely understand that. I
Hmm.
really do. And but I wish they had spoken with me. I did speak with several of his friends and colleagues, and they were very helpful. His former wife didn't speak to me on the record, but she kept me straight on various facts and issues, and I appreciate that.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah. So his friends were uh, all very helpful, the ones I spoke with. And, it may sound like this is a sad book. It's not a sad book. It has a
No.
sad ending, but it's not a sad book. And they don't speak of him sadly. They all, everybody remembers Ronnie with uh, tremendous affection and joy, uh, which really comes through, and I appreciated it.
Got a couple more questions in the crowd. First one is Gus the Saber Cat, who would like to ask a question through his mother, Molly McClure. Molly, go.
Well, Gus would just like to report that he's very cozy, but I guess I want to speak more as a comment. And Bruce might not remember this, but I had a great uncle who committed suicide.
Yeah.
Either just before I was born or when I was teeny tiny. And I can speak from being raised in a family that experienced this trauma, that as a kid getting raised in this family, the ones who were around didn't talk about it. Like, we would go and lay wreaths and we would pay our respects, but you just didn't talk about Uncle Stephen dying. To this day, my cousins, my dad's first cousins, my second cousins, and at one time I was very close to their kids, my cousin Stephen and Riley. It kind of just disappeared out of their memory. It's kind of just gone. It's very different than any other death in our family that we've ever experienced. So that
Well,
might be part of the why they didn't
Yeah.
want to talk.
Well, I'm sure that's so. I'm sure that's, well, at least not uncommon among families of,
Yeah.
of people who have taken their own lives. I know when
Yeah.
I was in high school, a woman in our neighborhood died exactly the same way as Ronnie. She ran a hose from the tailpipe of her car into the passenger seat, turned closed all the doors and turned the motor on.
Yeah, I honestly don't know how my Uncle Stephen died.
Yeah,
I know he committed suicide. And I know my dad's cousins, my cousin Jennifer and her sister and brother, were little. But they just don't talk about it.
yeah, it's very hard and often completely unfathomable. I know, when I was a kid, all the neighbors were shocked by this woman's death, but nobody had seen it coming. But that's not uncommon either.
Yeah. And they said, like, you were talking about, his depression. With my Uncle Stephen, everyone was around him all the time. And as you just said, you didn't see it because it was such a slow decline. Unless you didn't see him for 6-8 months, you would never have noticed it.
Well, and Ronnie at the end seemed his usual self to the
Yeah.
people that saw him in the last days and weeks of his life.
Yeah.
And he didn't want his family to find him. So he had arranged for a young friend of his to come and supposedly do some work on the house. And the friend came and found the doors open and found Ronnie. And Ronnie left a note apologizing to him,
Oh,
but
for heaven's sake.
explaining that he didn't want anyone from his family to find him.
Wow. Alec, you had your hands up. Did you have a question, Alec?
Sorry, no, I concur with Molly about the family's
Yeah.
whatever sadness about the end.
Yeah.
And that's why they didn't talk. But I would distinguish between not talking to you and not approving of the book. Those are they're related, but they're not really the same thing. So
Well,
Good point.
I really have no idea what the family might think of the book or if they've even read it. I have no idea.
Oh, wow. That would be a good question as to whether or not they really liked it at this point. I wonder if they ever saw it or whatever. Karen Holleran's got a question for us. Karen, how you doing?
Fine. How are you doing?
I am doing great, my friend. You are up. Ask away.
I was thinking if you were to teach about this person and what would his legacy be that you would want people to know?
I think his legacy really was joy. So many of his friends just love the man and they speak so fondly of him, all these years later. And I thoroughly enjoyed speaking with them. And Dave Phillips, one of his fellow crew members, umpiring, said, if you didn't enjoy Ronnie, you just didn't enjoy people.
Yeah. Alec makes a great comment in the chat. For younger family members who did not know him, your book might be very helpful.
Well, I would certainly like to think so. He's got nephews and grandnephews and other younger members of the family. I would hope that they might see the book somewhere and learn about Ronnie.
I hope so. Dixie, you're up. How you doing, Dix?
Think about him much within the family.
By definition, I have a softball question because it concerns the author. Could you give us a thumbnail sketch of your various connections to baseball and how you got into SABR?
Oh, well, I played baseball in high school. I was probably one of the worst outfielders they ever had. I loved the game. And I completely respected my coach. He was also my English teacher. I never played ball after that. I played a little softball. I started out in journalism, and I was a print reporter for various dailies. I was working in Palo Alto when I interviewed Ronnie. And with all the ball teams in the Bay Area, I wrote a feature column, so frequently it touched on baseball. So my bosses knew I liked the sport. So in 1983, I never got the story straight, but our writer covering the A's suddenly disappeared, and they asked if I wanted to take the beat. So with like, I don't know, half a day's warning, I was suddenly the A's beat writer, and I covered 11 games in my first 10 days, and finished out that season. And afterwards, resigned from the paper to go write the great American novel. I always expected to go back to newspapers, and I never did, but my love of baseball persisted. And then, I don't know, 12, 14 years ago, when I was living in West Virginia, I happened to come across a bound compilation of the Stars and Stripes Army newspaper from Paris in World War I. And it was a shabby copy, but my wife found a good copy for me for Christmas. And I was fascinated by the paper, and I was fascinated by their sports page. So that over time led me to writing about Major League Baseball during World War I. And that led me to the Bio Project, writing about World War I ball players. And when I'd done most of the World War I ball players that I wanted to write about, I became more recent, and I wrote about Steve Boros, the A's manager I covered. And then I wrote about Ronnie. And writing again about Ronnie got me, reignited my interest in him, and led to this book. So that's sort of my long roundabout story.
Is the legend that he once said he never called balks because he didn't understand the rule, is that true?
I think it's true-ish.
Okay.
With Ronnie, there are degrees of accuracy. And yeah, he didn't like the balk. He said he didn't understand it. Well, he was a bright man. He probably understood the rule, but the rule, well, I don't know. It was a strange rule, remains a strange rule. And no, he didn't like to call it box, and he didn't call it box.
He also would tell stories about if he had a rough night the night before, he would kind of turn the balls and strikes over to the catcher the next night if he was working the plate. How much of that legend is true?
I call this sort of thing Luciano lore, and some of it is demonstrably not true. Some of it has shades of truth in it. And I think this is one of those where there's probably some degree of truth in it, but I have no idea how much. I don't think it's a lot, but I wouldn't entirely discount the idea that some game somewhere when he was really in bad shape, a catcher might have helped him a little bit, but I have absolutely no proof of that.
Alec has a question. Alec, go.
Realizing it's later in life, what would Ron think of the ghost runner or the pitch clock?
Ooh,
Do you
interesting
think?
question.
Oh, that's a very good question. Wow. He might have tolerated them. He wasn't big for change, but he might have tolerated those. He would not have liked automatic balls and strikes because he knew failure and fallibility were part of the game. Plus, he was a labor organizer, and that's not going to. Nobody who does that is going to agree to powers being taken away from the umpires.
Quick follow up. What do you think he would think about the explosion of gambling?
He wouldn't be too happy with it. You know, he might have bench rules, but he didn't break them really, and he respected the game. And someone who disrespected the game, he would not have tolerated. And personally, I have to say, having written about World War I baseball and now the Black Sox, the scandal was always completely predictable. That's not surprising at all. And, I'm waiting for worse in baseball or whatever sport.
It's funny you say that, Jim. As I've been reading this with this controversy with the two Cleveland pitchers, and Molly will tell you, I constantly go back to a quote that elite SABR researcher Jacob Pomrenke gave me one day, which was, it's not a matter of if, but when he was referring to when another gambling scandal was going to come out, and here we are.
Right. I
So,
completely agree with him.
yeah.
And I have a book coming out next year about the White Sox during World War I, and you can see the cracks already. You can see the beginnings of the Black Sox scandal already. And Jacob was very helpful to me on that book. And yeah, we're in complete agreement about the inevitability of scandals involving gambling.
When somebody wants to know something about the Black Sox scandal, just call Jacob, because
That's right.
he knows. Dixie, go. Yeah, I bet he is.
Little bit of a follow-up question, which Alex already has in the chat, is what would he think of the catcher's pitch framing and telling him what was a strike and what wasn't?
Another good question. I think he would appreciate them trying to help and be suspicious of it in almost equal measure.
That's a good one. David, go.
Yeah, two parts because of what just came up. I'm delighted you're working on the White Sox before 1919. I assume you have looked at Don Zaminda's amazing book about them in 1920,
Yes,
in which he,
Don was another person who was very helpful.
yes, and he identified numerous cases.
Yeah.
It's really incredible.
That's
But
right.
I have a completely different question. I hesitated to ask this, but I certainly don't mean it in any mean-spirited way. We talked about Ron's depression. You mentioned that he had no romantic partner, and I can't believe it hasn't occurred to you to wonder if he might have been gay.
Oh, it absolutely occurred to me, and I mentioned it in the book.
Okay. Yeah.
After his death, there was speculation in the umpire community, the baseball community, among his friends. There definitely was speculation. Absolutely nobody could point to a specific incident or person. Nobody.
Yeah.
His friends say, no, Ronnie wasn't gay. Though I think the best answer was from David Fisher, his co-author in all those books. He told me, and I quoted in the book, that he thought Ronnie was asexual in the end.
Okay.
He had been married for a while.
Oh, we had. Oh, right. Yeah.
And it just didn't work out. I've been in contact with his former wife. I've never asked her those questions because that's just
Yeah.
outside the parameters of,
Yeah.
of communicating with me. But yeah, he had nobody close to him, no romantic partner at the end, or for many years before his end, as far as I could tell. He did have various girlfriends later in his life, but none that appeared to be really important to him, or nothing that lasted. It was too bad. He had a poor self-image of himself. He made fun of his own body,
Yes.
and sometimes almost embarrassing ways. It's too bad, and it was interesting to me seeing pictures of him throughout his life. When he was at Syracuse, when he was in shape, he was a very handsome man. He really was. I've got one picture of him with some teammates, teaching some high schoolers, and he's practically an Adonis. He was just in such good shape, and it's too bad that he couldn't keep that image with him. But of course, after football, he struggled all the rest of his life with his weight and his vision of himself, and it's too bad.
Mhm. Thank you.
You can do a Google image search for a lot of pictures of Ronnie from his days as an umpire. I haven't been able to really find much when it comes to his formative years on the gridiron. But you see a lot of his training. If you do a Google search in Google Images for him, you're going to see a lot of his transformation from his early days umpiring, where he was pretty jacked when he started, to the end where he started that poking fun of himself and whatnot. How long was he with NBC?
2 seasons.
Sorry,
2 seasons.
what did he do?
1980 and 81.
80. What did he do afterward?
That's when the book started. When NBC, they had an option for a third year and they didn't pick it up. But by that time, the books were already underway. So in 1980, his last season with NBC was 81. In 1982, the spring of 82, that's when the first book came out. So
he
was always very fortunate in those transitions.
Why didn't they pick him up?
Well,
I thought he was well liked.
he was well liked. During the second season, he wasn't well respected as a sportscaster. The rap was that he didn't do the work. And I think there's truth in that. Ronnie would get in there and wing it. He was always very entertaining, but he would, mispronounce many players' names, and he didn't have the deep background that the TV folks want.
Jerry Coleman, Ralph Kiner, I can think of, I don't know how many, they made careers out of mispronouncing people's names.
Yeah, they're local guys, though. I think that this was a national. This was like the game of the week or something?
This was the alternate game of the week. Yes.
Yeah, like Rizzuto, obviously. Yeah, the local people, or any Boston announcer ever, basically. Like they just, they get by, right?
Yeah,
and
they had a lot of people waiting for that slot, and they let Merle Harmon go at the same time, and Merle landed on his feet in Texas, and Ronnie landed on his feet with the books.
How long did it take you to write this?
Oh,
There's
not a simple answer to that. I mean, I go back to 82, go back to his death, I go back to the Bio Project profile. But in really digging into it, probably a year and a half or so.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
then the production process always takes a long time too. That took about a year and a half. So
The book is called The Big Loosh, The Unruly Life of Umpire Ron Luciano. Jim, tell them where they could find it.
well, you can find it on all the online bookshops. You can get it directly from University of Nebraska Press. You can try your local bookstore. If they don't have it, they certainly can order it. And here's a look at it here. And I love that picture of Ronnie.
I know it. I know it. You know, we
That
tried.
picture has never been published before. It was a shot they took when he was shooting some photos for print ads, and they were just sort of fooling around afterwards. And I stumbled across it on the photographer's website, and the designers at Nebraska picked it up, and I'm so glad they did.
I think you can see a picture of the cover of the book on your screen now. So that was never published until now?
No, it was on the photographer's website in the celebrity section, but it wasn't used for any ad or for anything.
Huh. I didn't know that. That's very interesting. Interesting discussion about a fascinating individual, at least from my childhood, a fascinating individual in Major League Baseball, whether or not he was a player of any magnitude. As an umpire, he was so memorable. I can see him finger shooting guys out. I'm pretty sure he was the first base umpire when Yaz got number 3,000. Now that I think of it, because I could see him kind of waving time out and almost celebrating with Yastrzemski when he reached first base. He just seemed to have this joy and verve for baseball that a lot of guys really don't have. And to understand more about his life and his struggles mentally as the years went on, real interesting window into his life. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you for having me and talking about Ronnie. I enjoyed it.
We appreciate you. Alex stays in the chat, says he was a runner-up for Cheers on for Coach on Cheers. Said
that's not Luciano lore. That's fact.
Yep. That's the one trivia fact about Luciano that I knew, was that he was runner-up for Coach. So very interesting stuff. All right, we're back Monday, November 17th, with Steve Treater and his presentation From the Sublime to the Ridiculous, the ownership of the Oakland A's from 1980 to 2025. The sign-up link is available in the chapter meeting booklet and at the SABR events calendar. And finally, if you're a baseball fan watching on YouTube and you like what you see, please like this video and subscribe to our channel to be alerted to each of our weekly uploads. And if you are not yet a member, you need to join the Society for American Baseball Research, the premier baseball community. Offering an amazing baseball buffet of options to explore your fandom, SABR boasts more than 35 different research committees, over 80 regional chapters, and innumerable opportunities to connect with baseball minds across the world, just like Jim Leeke. For more information, go to SABR.org today. Jim Leeke, you, sir, are fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's get everybody out of here. We'll see everybody Monday night. Have a great night, everyone.